Sometimes a world does not fall in a single night. Sometimes it dies slowly, heart first. Lyuvob was one of those worlds, a peaceful imperial frontier planet with quiet mountains, silver skies, and a people who believed courage alone could keep the galaxy's horrors away. They were wrong. What happened on Lyuvob became a whisper across the Imperium, a story of a commander who stood when all logic said run, a regiment that refused to abandon its home, a sacrifice so great that even the grim darkness paused to remember. Today, you will hear their story, and by the end, you will understand why the Imperium calls it the Tragedy of Lyuvob. Lyuvob had always been quiet, a place where children learned to read under the shade of tall ironwood trees, and farmers prayed to the Emperor at dawn before tending to their fields. Commander Arven Dalmora, veteran of 3 campaigns, believed he had finally earned his rest here. His regiment, the Lyuvob thought a first-line guard, was small but proud. Farmers, miners, teachers, and sons who wore the Emperor's colors with honest hearts. But peace rarely lasts in the 41st millennium. The first sign was the sky. 3 weeks before the invasion, Arven noticed the clouds moving wrong, thin streaks that twisted unnaturally like claws scraping across heaven itself. Astropaths reported psychic static. Vox messages from nearby sectors went silent. Still, the administratum insisted nothing was wrong. The people trusted their leaders. Arven trusted his instincts. He gathered his officers, Captain Sera Valen, a woman whose eyes carried both fire and sorrow, and Medic Tim, who still believed every life could be saved. "Prepare the regiment," Arven said quietly. "Something is coming." They trained harder. They fortified old bunkers. They checked and rechecked their ammunition. But nothing could prepare them for the truth. On the 4th night, the warning came, not from orbit, but from the ground itself. A mining crew in the northern ridge uncovered a cavern they swore wasn't there a week ago. Inside were symbols carved by impossible hands and spores that smelled like blood. Then the screaming started, a small Tyranid vanguard. Gaunts, pure strains, and things with too many limbs tore through the mining camp before a single distress signal could be sent. Only one miner survived, delirious, muttering words that chilled Arven's blood. "They are hungry, they are coming, and we are already dead." The next morning, bioships filled the sky. Lyuvob had no orbital defenses, no Navy fleet nearby, just a world of ordinary people staring at the storm descending upon them. Arven could have ordered an evacuation. He could have abandoned the outer districts. He could have saved himself. Instead, he looked at his frightened regiment, his people, and chose the hardest path. Lyuvob does not bow. We stand until the Emperor himself calls us home. And so began the longest night in Lyuvob's history. The Tyranids fell like rain, screeching, clawing, ripping into trenches the guard had barely finished digging. The Lyuvob 31st fought bravely, but the ground shook with every monstrous step. Arven held the line, shouting until his voice cracked, firing until his rifle melted with heat. But courage comes with a cost, and Lyuvob was about to pay all of it. When the Eastern Front collapsed, thousands of civilians fled toward the capital. Sera Valen, took a squad to escort them, only to watch half her soldiers die in seconds as a ravener burst from below, shredding the ground like water. Joral treated the wounded with trembling hands, every bandage a desperate prayer. The guard fought hour after hour, day after day. For every Tyranid killed, 10 more replaced it. The sky remained dark with wings, yet Arven refused to fall back. "We protect them," he said, "every last one, but even commanders break." On the 5th night, Arven watched the enemy breach the last defensive berm. He saw his men exhausted, bleeding, terrified, still fighting. Something inside him cracked, not from fear, but from guilt. "I led them to this." Sera placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, Commander, you gave them something to die for." He nodded just once and prepared for the end. The capital city, Astarwall, became the final refuge. Civilians packed into shelters. The guard formed a ring around the city, thin, fragile, desperate. Overhead, Tyranid tentacles pierced the clouds as bioships fed on the world's atmosphere itself. Arven knew the truth. Lyuvob would not be saved, but it could still be remembered. He sent a final astropathic message, a pulse of sorrow and steel into the void. "Here stands Lyuvob. We die, but we do not break." Then the Tyranids came. The final assault hit like a living tsunami. Carnifexes rammed walls until stone turned to dust. Gargoyles darkened the sky. Warriors advanced in disciplined waves, their scything talons slicing through flesh and armor alike. The Lyuvob 31st fought like legends. Farmers with laser guns stood beside retired soldiers. Teenage recruits fired until their hands blistered. Old veterans laughed bitterly as they charged forward, shouting the Emperor's name with their final breath. Sera Valen led the western barricade, her voice steady even as she reloaded with trembling fingers. She saved a child, then killed a lictor in the same heartbeat. Blood soaked her armor, but she never stepped back. Medic Joral turned the cathedral into a field hospital. He worked on shattered limbs, burned flesh, torn organs, never stopping, never resting. When his tools ran out, he used his hands. When his strength faded, he whispered apologies to the dying. The Tyranids did not care. They devoured everything. By midnight, only the inner square remained. Arven stood there alone with barely 100 survivors. His uniform was torn, his armor cracked, his face smeared with ash, but his eyes still burned with the same fire that had once protected Lyuvob's peace. He looked at the civilians huddled behind him. This world was worth something. Tonight, we show the galaxy why. He activated the city's ancient geothermal core, a relic forgotten by the Mechanicus. When overloaded, it would ignite the entire submantle in a cleansing fire, a death that denied the Tyranids their feast. Sera limped to his side. "You're staying. I have to arm the final seal." "I'm staying too." He looked at her with tired affection. "You've done enough. Get them out." She shook her head. "No one dies alone tonight." Together, they activated the core. The ground rumbled. The air shimmered. Far above, the bioships paused, sensing something they could not consume. Arven turned to the survivors, the last children of Lyuvob. "Run, live, carry our story." They obeyed. Arven and Sera stood in the center of the square as the light grew beneath them, brighter, hotter, purifying. Sera whispered, "We did our duty." Arven nodded. We gave them hope. Lyuvob exploded like a second sun. Tyranids burned. Bioships collapsed. The world died, but its courage lived on. Weeks later, the Imperium received the final astropathic echo. A world can fall, but courage never does. The Lyuvob 31st became a symbol in regiments across the Imperium. Statues were built. Songs were written. Children learned the names Arven and Sera as examples of unbroken will. And though Lyuvob is now only ash drifting through the void, every guard commander who prepares for battle whispers the same quiet prayer. May we be as brave as Lyuvob